welcome to another edition of Film Club, and today I want to talk about the Netflix original movie 1922 starring Thomas Jane. Now, I'm a big fan of the original Stephen King work that this film is based upon. It is part of, I believe, his 2010 short stories Full Dark No Stars. I could be wrong on that. It might have been another. It's either that one or it's After Midnight. I can't remember. You can correct me in the comments below. But it's a short story in one of those two books. And I was a big fan of it at the time. So I was really excited. In fact, out of these two Stephen King movies we got on Netflix this month, between this and Gerald's Game, I was more excited about this one because I was more recently familiar with the work than Gerald's Game is something I read years and years ago. So I was more excited about these two for that. And I really like actor Thomas Jane. I think he's a very underrated actor, and he does a phenomenal job in this movie. This movie is very faithful to its source material, with one catch at the very end of it that I had a little minor problem with, so we'll go ahead and dive in. So 1922 is about Thomas Jane's character. Forget what their last name is, but his first name is Wilfred, and he and his wife own a lot of land. They own a farm in 1922, and the farm's not been doing well in the recent years, and his wife has aspirations of moving into the city and starting a dress store. She wants to make dresses and stuff for a living, and he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to give up his land. He loves living on the farm, he loves the farmland, and he loves raising his son on the farm. His wife also wants to get a divorce. She feels that their marriage is over, so she owns a majority of the land. The land was given to them through her father as like a marriage gift when they were married, and she wants to sell her part. And the problem is, if she sells her 100 acres, then his like 80 acres that he owns is null and void, and it all has to go in the sale. So he really doesn't have a say in this. Now, she tries to be nice with him at the beginning and tell him, hey, you have some time to think about it, whatever. And he does. They have a little nice montage of him sitting around and thinking about it. And then he comes to her and he tells her, I've decided I'm not selling. We're not going to do this. She wants to do it anyways because she's the majority vote on it. So she's going to go ahead and press on with it. So then he gets the idea and he decides, well, there's no other way around this. I'm just going to have to kill her. And because he wants to keep this land so bad, and that's what this whole movie is about. It is about the act of violence that he commits and the guilt he has after it. So he actually coerces his son, his own son, into helping him kill. And actually, in reality, his son is the one that commits the act of murder. He just oversees it. So it's a dark movie, and it deals with the guilt and the consequences after what he does. Now, the film is a little bit different in the book in regards to what happens after her death. Now, in the book, after her death, they throw her down this well, and then she kind of haunts him through rats. Rats infest her body, and then he's constantly seeing these rats everywhere. I felt that the film version, there were definitely more and more scenes. If you read the book, you read the novella that this story is based on, there are a lot more scenes of him continuously looking down the well and seeing this deformed body get worse and worse. Thankfully, they cut that out of this movie. They didn't have to do that, and I felt that cutting that out of this movie didn't really affect the story in any way, shape, or form. But it just, after that, it becomes a big cover-up. So they actually, in order to, the rats keep bothering him, and so then he decides, well, I need to fill in this well and just be done with it. But he doesn't want to raise questions with the neighbors on where this is, because there's already questions about what happened to his wife, and he and his son have to come up with some story about how she just left in the middle of the night and only packed a suitcase. But the neighbors and the locals and the local law enforcement are already kind of skeptical on this, so in order to give himself peace of mind, he decides, I have to fill in the well. But that would just raise more questions. So he actually brings out one of his old cows and forces this cow onto this well, and then the cow falls in, dies, whatever, so he can have an alibi here that, oh, this cow walked over the well and fell in. And then he ends up killing the cow and filling the well in that way. But the rats keep coming, and they keep haunting him. His son has a fascination with the next door neighbor who's a farmer. He has a daughter, and they have a fascination with each other, and he ends up actually impregnating her. And then his dad, is like, well, this is a huge deal. You can't be doing this. You're only 15, that kind of stuff. And that father comes over, who's played by Neil McDonough, who another great actor that I like a lot. And he only has a couple scenes, but I felt he was really good here too. He, announces like, hey, I'm sending my daughter up to this Catholic school where they're going to take care of this. They'll you know, put her through school while she has this child, and then this child will be put up for adoption, and this can be a mistake that we don't talk about anymore. He tells Wilfred, you know, it's going to cost $300 to do this. This is half of your mistake, so you need to pay me $150. Wilfred says, I don't have $150. He says, that's fine, I need $75. And Wilfred, you know, responds with, well, I don't have $75. He tells him, you need to come up with $75, essentially. What ends up happening is the girl ends up going away to the school, and his son is so distraught after killing his mother that the only clean of hope he has in this world right now is this girl. So he ends up stealing his dad's car and going up to get her, and then one night when, you know, and things begin to crumble around down Wilfred, much like the novel it's based on. And one night he's actually visited by the ghost of his dead wife, who tells him, she gives him a premonition about what's going to happen to their son. Their son and this young girl, they become like a Bonnie and Clyde type, where they're running around, and I think they're called the Sweetheart Bandits, and they're running around, they're robbing different places to get money, and they're killing people and stuff. It's pretty bad. And this whole story is about, because of the act of violence he committed, his whole life falls apart. He literally watches all these things fall apart. He has a bad season on the farm, you know, all this stuff happens. Now, in the book, they go more into detail about how his farm suffers that winter. I felt like they really kind of overlooked that in this movie. This whole movie hyper focuses on his decision, his act of violence, and the guilt he feels after it, which is fine, but I felt other parts of the story kind of suffer because of it. And it's still a very faithful adaptation of a Stephen King novel. So, and anyways, things keep going and propelling out of proportion and everything here. I don't want to spoil every part of the movie until I tell you guys my rating, and then we'll get into spoilers. So I'm giving this movie 1 thumb up. I thought it was good. I think Gerald's Game was better in terms of straight adaptations because they really didn't stray from the book. There is a major reason why I had a little bit of a problem with the end of this movie, and that's where we're going to get into spoilers now. So spoilers for the rest of the movie. If you just want to know a rating for it, it's 1 thumb up. I definitely think it's worth your time. It's one of the better movies I've watched on Netflix, but if you're a fan of the original book that this is based on, then you might have a couple issues with how they portray it in this movie. So now you've been warned, spoilers ahead. So the end of this movie, this whole movie is told in a flashback while he's in a hotel and he's writing this whole story down as kind of like a suicide note, because he's going to just end his life because he's had enough with, you know, everything that's happened to him, all this string of bad luck, you know, what happened with his son. Because what ends up happening is his son and this girl die. They both get killed. The wife dies of starvation and hypothermia. The son dies too. Or actually, I think the son is robbed by someone and killed. So they're dead. That's over. And at this point, then he goes and he tries to start a new life. He ends up giving up his land. In the book, he actually sells it, but in the movie, he just ends up giving it up. And he ends up moving to Oklahoma City and taking a couple odd jobs. But these rats keep haunting him throughout this whole thing. So he ends up quitting these jobs, and he starts riding around and visiting these locations where his son robbed, which seems really weird. I don't know why you would do that, but whatever. Different times, I guess. And so the end of this movie is him sitting in this hotel room. He's been writing this tale, and in the book, what happens is he dies, but when they find him, like the cops and stuff, they find bite marks all over him, but you can't tell if the bite marks are from rats or if the bite marks are from him because he went crazy. And that's what I liked about the original book, was it gave you a fine line between, did this man actually go crazy or did this shit actually happen to him? In the movie, he is visited by his dead wife and dead son at the end of the movie, and they kind of tell him like, hey, it's your time now, and that's how the movie ends. So I was a little bummed by that because I liked the psychological aspect of this book of, you didn't know, did this stuff really happen to this guy or was he just crazy? And in the movie, they kind of just go with the whole thing of this stuff really happened with him. They don't give you the option to decide for yourself what the end is. And I thought that was a little bit kind of poor because I felt like they cheated a really major part of this story. So because of that, that's why I'm giving this 1 thumb up. I still think it's wonderfully acted. I think Thomas Jane, again, very underrated actor. You know, I've been a fan of him since The Punisher from 2004, his short-lived HBO show Hun. He's also been in a couple Stephen King movies. You know, not Dreamcatcher isn't a good movie, but The Mist is a good movie, and you definitely should watch that. So he's done some Stephen King work. So it was nice to see him return and do another Stephen King adaptation film, because I think he's really good in these, and I think he does some of his best work he's ever done in this movie. He really makes you believe he's this character, and I think the cinematography in this movie is really good too. It really makes you feel like you're in the 1920s. The only other problem I had with this is, well, every other aspect of this movie feels like you're in the 1920s. The actress who plays his wife does not feel like she's in the 1920s, and she, like, her couple scenes before she's killed just feel kind of off, and she doesn't really speak like they would back then, whereas Thomas Jane's character does and his son does. Everybody else does in this movie but her. So I felt that was a little bad too. But anyways, one thumb up for 1922. I think it's worth your time. I think it's worth a watch. If you have Netflix, pretty much everybody does. It's definitely worth the hour and 45 minutes of runtime that this movie is. Anyways, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.